All right, the next step after we have our file downloaded is we're going to open Fusion. So here we have Fusion. Click on that. Fusion takes a little while to load. You can't have two people doing Fusion on two different computers on the same account at the same time, right? So you can only have one person doing it per account. Okay, we're inside Fusion. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to Insert. We're gonna insert a mesh. Now Fusion is constantly updating. There's been several changes just in the little bit of time that I've been using it, so just keep that in mind. We're gonna go to Downloads. We got our Praying Hands STL, open. Okay, so here we have the mesh, and we're just gonna say okay. Now you'll notice if you zoom in here, there's a lot of little bitty triangles, and that's one thing you want to pay attention to with Fusion. So we clicked on this arrow here to expand this, and we have this body. This symbol means that it's a mesh body. We're gonna right click on that and see properties. And we want to see the mesh properties. So this mesh has 134,514 facets. So that's triangles. Now, Fusion, once we need to convert this from a mesh to a body. And once we convert it to a body, that way we can manipulate it and stuff, squish it and all that. Fusion doesn't really like meshes that have more than 10,000 faces. Because if it has more than 10,000 faces, it's going to crash or slow down quite a bit. So I usually try to keep mine between 10 and 15,000 faces, and that usually works pretty well. So you can see here, we're going to need to decrease it by about 10%, right? Well, we're going to need to decrease it by about 90% in order to have the right facet count. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our mesh here. We're going to go to mesh. And then this one right here, reduce, we're going to reduce it. So we don't want to reduce it to 25%. We want to reduce it to 10%. And then we'll say, okay, it'll take a little bit. Okay, so now you can see we have a lot fewer triangles. We've lost a lot of detail, but the program will work. And it still has reasonably good detail. So let's see what kind of facet count we have now. So now we're down to about 13,000, which is what we expected, which is pretty good. We can work with that. So if you click on this little orbit button here, make sure it's an orbit symbol, not this random circle symbol here. So you can see it looks pretty good. We've lost some things like the fingernails. You can't see those anymore, but it's not too bad. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, okay, now this model here is completely 3D, right? It's not already nice and flat. So we're gonna cut it out of a flat piece here. If we look at the front, that looks like a pretty good angle. If we needed to, we could rotate it, but that looks pretty good right there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna now convert this. We're gonna have it selected, say modify, and we're gonna convert mesh. Parametric is fine. We'll just leave all that the way it is. Say okay. So it was a pink or purple color. Now it's silver. This is the color we want. This means it's a body now. You'll notice this icon has changed. It's a body. Solid looking little rectangle thing. And that's what we need. This is the one we can actually mush and all that kind of stuff as we need to. And that's actually what we're going to do now. So we're going to use a 1x piece of scrap wood, which means that it is 0.75 inches roughly depth. And if we go to Google, we'll see that 0.75 inches to millimeters is about 19.05. So what we want to do is we want to squish this so that on the y-axis, it's about 19.05. So first we want to see what it is currently. So we want to change it from 100 to 19.05. And if we just go to an online calculator here, we just type in calculator. The way we do that is we say 19 divided by, so this is what we want, and this is what we currently have, 100. So we need to multiply it by 0.19. We'll say okay. And we're going to go to solid now. And it really matters which one of these you're on because you have completely different options. So we're going to say modify, and we want to scale it. Now we don't want to do a uniform scale. We want to do a non-uniform scale because we're only scaling on the y-axis. So the y is going to be 0.19, and we'll leave the others the way they are. So okay. Because that process takes a little while. Okay, so it's finished scaling from this angle. It still looks the same, but if we rotate it now, you'll see it's very flat, right? So we've successfully flattened it to be about 3/4 of an inch thick. So that's what we needed right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save this first of all. I'm just going to call this hands. We'll save it as an admin project. Okay, the little asterisk is gone, so we know it's finished saving. Okay, now one thing you'll notice is where it says top right now, if we click on top, this is what it thinks of as the top. Now, orientation is pretty important, so we don't want that to be the top because then it would not print well. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our body and rotate it here. Rotate it, and we're going to select an axis. We want to lay it down. So we're going to rotate that 90 degrees. So now we have the right side facing up that we want facing up. So we'll say okay. So we want the z-axis pointing up, which is what we have. So now if we click on top, like that, but you notice top is written upside down. So we need to rotate it again. So we're going to rotate it. This time we're going to rotate it around the z-axis instead of the x-axis. So we'll click on the z-axis here. If you don't see the axis, remember to click on origin to turn it on or off. Select our axis, select this, select our body. We're going to select this. We're going to rotate it 180 degrees here. We'll say okay. Okay, so now when we look at our picture, this top is written correctly, and this is what we want the CNC machine to be looking down at. So we have it all correctly oriented. Okay, so there's one more thing we need to do before we actually start programming it and everything. And that is we need to create an outline of this for the computer to use for, that way it doesn't try to eat away the entire board. It only tries to eat away around this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch. And we're going to click on this yellow square right here. That's on the same, facing the same way as the top, right? And so we have this. Then we're going to say create, and we're going to project. And for the geometry, we're going to click on this. So it's looking for bodies. We're going to click this body here. So we have the body selected. We're going to say okay. Now this is where it can sometimes give you problems. So you want to watch this. But what we're going to do is we're going to make this invisible here for a second. So we just see this. And you'll notice that most of these are black circles, which is what we want. But we do have a few white circles. And also the inside and the outside are the same color. So that's not good. That means it didn't successfully connect everything. And so what we have here is we have some of these nodes are not fully connecting, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight all these nodes that are in the problem area here. We're just going to delete them all. I'm going to zoom in really close right here. You can tell there's some weird stuff going on there. So we're just going to delete these extra nodes. We don't need those. Delete these extra nodes. We don't need those. Okay. So we have one node right there on the end like we want. Zoom back out. Zoom in over here. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to delete those nodes. Okay. So now we have those two nodes. We're going to connect them with a line. Okay. So now it's a nice clean line there. No empty nodes. So now we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to select all these extra nodes that are not working for us, delete them. Zoom in here, select that node, delete it. Okay. And then connect these nodes. So that extra one to that one. Now you'll notice when we did that, this is now working. This has got a nice light blue on the inside and it's different than the color on the outside. That means that this is recognized now as one nice clean shape. Okay, so we're going to finish sketch. We're going to go ahead and turn back on our that so you can see it outlines it nicely. So now We have our body. We have it at the right dimensions, right? It doesn't matter that these aren't on the same plane. That's irrelevant. And we have it in the right orientation, right? With Z up, X to the side, Y going vertical. Okay. So now we're going to save.